Right now, as you're watching this, someone in Brazil just bought oil from Saudi Arabia using American dollars. Someone in Japan just settled in debt with Germany using American dollars. Hell, someone in Nigeria probably just bought Chinese electronics using, you guessed it, American dollars. Here's the weird part. None of those people live in America. The US dollar isn't just a currency, it's the currency. About 88% of all global transactions touch the dollar at some point. Nearly 60% of the world's foreign exchange reserves are held in dollars. When central banks around the world need a safe place to park their money, they buy US Treasury bonds. Not euros, not yen, not yuan, dollars. This setup didn't happen by accident. It was engineered. And right now, 75 years after that engineering began, the whole system is starting to crack in ways most people aren't paying attention to. So how did one country's currency become the entire world's problem? And what happens when the world decides it doesn't want to play by those rules anymore? Let's rewind to 1944. World War II is still raging, but the Allies know they're going to win. So 44 countries send delegates to a resort in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to redesign the global financial system. The question on the table: what backs money? For centuries, it was gold. You had gold, you had credibility. But there's a problem. There's only so much gold. Economies were growing faster than anyone could dig metal out of the ground, so they needed a new anchor. Enter the United States. At the time, America held about 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. It had the biggest economy, the strongest military, and it made everyone a deal. We'll peg the dollar to gold at $35 an ounce. You peg your currency to the dollar. Everyone stays stable, everyone trades easy. It worked for a while. Then, in 1971, Richard Nixon did something radical. He ended the dollar's convertibility to gold, just severed the link. No more gold backing. The dollar became what's called a fiat currency. It's worth something because the US government says it is. And here's the kicker. The world kept using it anyway. Why? Because oil. In the early 70s, the US cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. It went something like this. You sell oil exclusively in dollars, we'll protect you militarily and buy your government bonds. Boom, the petrodollar was born. Now, if you're a country that needs energy, and every country needs energy, you need dollars to buy it. Doesn't matter if you're China, India, or Iceland. You earn dollars, you hold dollars, you settle in dollars. The global economy basically runs on a subscription model, and the US owns the platform. This gives America an absurd advantage. It can print money to pay its debts, and the inflation gets exported worldwide because everyone else is holding those dollars too. It can borrow at lower interest rates than any other nation because demand for dollar-denominated debt is essentially guaranteed. It can freeze countries out of the global financial system just by cutting them off to access to dollars. That's not a currency, that's leverage. But leverage works both ways, and the math is starting to get uncomfortable. Here's what's happening right now, quietly, under the surface. China and Russia have been settling trade in yuan and rubles for years. Saudi Arabia just opened its first yuan-based oil trade. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are actively discussing creating their own reserve currency to bypass the dollar entirely. Central banks around the world have been buying gold at the fastest pace in decades. Why? Because gold doesn't have a Federal Reserve behind it that can print more whenever it feels like it. Meanwhile, the U.S. national debt just crossed $36 trillion. The interest payments alone are over $1 trillion a year. That's more than the defense budget. To service that debt, the U.S. has to keep printing dollars, which dilutes the value of every dollar already in circulation, and the rest of the world is watching. Here's the thing people miss. The dollar's dominance isn't guaranteed by economics, it's guaranteed by trust. And trust is built on consistency, stability, and the belief that the system won't be weaponized against you. But the US has frozen Russian dollar reserves. It's used the dollar as a sanctions weapon. It's run deficits that would collapse any other currency. Trust erodes slowly, then all at once. So what happens if the world moves away from the dollar? For Americans, it could mean the end of cheap borrowing, higher interest rates, real inflation that actually hits home. The cost of living could spike because the US would lose its ability to export inflation to the rest of the world. For everyone else, it's chaos in the short term. Transitioning away from a 75-year-old system doesn't happen cleanly. Trade slows, markets panic, winners and losers get decided not by economics, but who holds leverage in the transition. But here's the irony. The very tools that made the dollar dominant, control, sanctions, unlimited printing, are the same tools accelerating its decline. The throne isn't empty yet, but the king is bleeding. So here's the question no one's answering. What comes after the dollar? Another currency? A basket of currencies. Digital money controlled by algorithms instead of governments? Nobody knows, but the transition has already started, and you're living through it. If this breakdown shifted how you see the global economy, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more scripts that follow the money where it actually goes.